Hey guys, welcome back to another Q&A. It is March 18th, 2021. So let's see what we have going on this week. EAAs, intra and post-workout supplementation, effective or overkill? They had seen somebody mention on a podcast that EAAs intra only may not be as effective as EAAs intra plus post due to the muscle rebuilding process taking up to 12 hours or more after a training session. Well, yeah, the muscle building process is going to be really, all the time, especially even if you're taking, a day off between training sessions or something, there's going to be a rebuilding process most of the time. But that's also why you have your meals, right? That's why you have an adequate amount of protein in your meals. That's why you at least meet a minimum threshold of protein for protein synthesis, especially your leucine branched chain amino acids. So do you need EAA supplementation? Not really. You could potentially make a case for them during a workout, depending on when your pre-workout meal is and when your post-workout meal is. I think they're fine to include as a safety blanket in there anyhow, but I don't necessarily think you need to constantly supplement with them past that window. Just eat sufficient amount of protein, sufficient leucine content, or at least a minimum amount of protein to cause muscle protein synthesis during that period, and really all the time, right? You're doing that on days you aren't training too, so that's not like anything you wouldn't do anyhow, right? Favorite nightly alternative to NyQuil that's not melatonin or CBD? So to be completely honest, I don't want to use anything at night if I don't have to, like in terms of supplements that are specifically geared towards making me sleep or enhancing my sleep. I generally don't use anything. I have a good sleep environment. I block out artificial light, bring all my lights down. We're mostly like salt lamps or candles at close to bedtime. Don't do anything too stimulating, so on and so forth. Good daily routine. Your whole day's routine also is going to make a huge difference here in your sleep. That's kind of like a whole different, that's like a whole topic in and of itself. But I would say no, just don't take anything. Just make sure that your routine is good. Your body's very well equipped with the right neurotransmitters, the right chemicals, the right circadian patterns and behaviors to sleep on its own if you provide it with the right inputs. Now, if you don't, then you may need some assistance, and not every day is going to be perfect. There may be days where a little more stress and need to calm down more at night and things like that, which I understand that does happen. So if that is the case, I would say probably my favorite supplement here is going to be Morphogen Nutrition's Morphicalm. And so this one does not contain melatonin. The goal here is, well, one would be like L-theanine, right? GABA receptor, GABA activity. So we're trying to bring us back down into this parasympathetic state. It's calming, it's soothing. Not necessarily sedative, but it's definitely calming and helps set up that environment where we can get better sleep. Also, like higher dose of phosphatidylserine to bring down this cortisol response and adrenaline response that you might have at night if you are stressed or you are anxious. Again, bring you down into the state. And there are several other ingredients in there as well, but that's probably the product that I would look for personally. Of course, you could just do separate ingredients, but that's kind of my go-to. If I need that, I can feel it. I'm like, not really where I want to be, stressful day, I got a lot on my mind, so I'm going to take a serving, gets me back into that state I want so I can be calm and ready to go to sleep. But again, it's really not common that I use anything, to be completely honest. Should there be periods of blasting and cruising with insulin usage of all types? So I'm assuming they mean like all analogs, basal, rapid, human insulin, like your Novolins. Yes and no. In and of itself, like the act of taking the insulin is not causing an issue. However, regardless of whether you take insulin or not, overeating for an extended period of time can cause insulin resistance, right? Because you're going to need to keep increasing your dose. Even if you're not taking insulin, your pancreas is going to need to increase the amount that it produces endogenously. So you are going to become insulin resistant, either from your pancreas is going to get worn out, right? Or your cells are going to become insulin resistant because they're being bombarded too much. So it can kind of have, like multiple layers, I guess, there? The answer would be no, you don't really need to, but you need to cycle through periods of probably becoming more insulin sensitive, right? And in which case you don't really need to take the exogenous insulin. So you could think of blasting and cruising as using it during times of increased insulin demand, so you can assist your pancreas in that process, and you can assist your overall, especially if you're using other compounds like, you know, like your growth hormone and things. And so in the IGF process, so you can assist your body and enhance that part of the process while easing the tension on your pancreas. And then you don't really need to do that during periods where you're more insulin sensitive. So that could be your cruising period. So by default, you're kind of doing that anyhow. Because again, like if you're leaner and you're not eating as much and your blood glucose is controlled and all that, you're not really have a need to take insulin. I mean, if you took too much, obviously you just go hypoglycemic. So there's not really like any room in there to use it. Okay. So that's kind of by default, you really are like going on and going off based on your fat loss, non-fat loss, surplus, non-surplus, so on and so forth, in a nutshell. And there could be some other small variables in there too, for sure. Possible complications to fat loss with anti-anxiety and bipolar drugs such as, and I might say these wrong, guys, I'm going to try, such as lomotrigine or lomotrigine, V-Bird, Latuda, I think I'm saying that one right, and Focalin, I don't know. I'm better at just reading them than saying them out loud, so bear with me. So one of these, I'm not exactly sure what it is, because sometimes they have generic names and brand names, and obviously like the active compound in the drug will be the same, but there could be multiple names for it. But the other three I am familiar with. But anywho, they're not this. Okay, so these aren't even the same drug class. So they're serotonin, like a serotonin type drug, you know, your SSRI type drug, also your stimulant type drug, anti-seizure type drug. This question cannot be answered directly. It's more of a, could there be downstream effects that could make fat loss harder potentially? The answer would probably be yes, but it's not going to be due to calories in and calories out, like surplus versus, you know, like deficit type thing. It's going to be more so the fact that you are greatly manipulating your neurotransmitter profile, your hormone profile, probably your gut as well. Because again, we have stimulants in here, we have serotonin, you know, we have serotonin reuptakes in here. The issue would probably be that all of these downstream systems, gut, liver, brain, gut-brain axis, so on, like all this stuff is going to be disrupted to the point of making your body function very poorly. So could that potentially cause indirect issues with hormones, thyroid access, thyroid hormone conversion and binding and things like this? Yes, for sure, 100%. But there's going to be steps. Like there's going to be steps that occur in this. Like your body's going to have to, you're going to have imbalance in multiple areas before you get to that end point that's causing you some type of like weight loss resistance, right? Because it's not going to control how much food goes in and out of your mouth. I have no idea what this, if they're asking about if one person's taking all of these drugs, or if it's like they have clients that are maybe taking one of these things. There's just multiple people. But, you know, anytime I see these things, and there are genetic factors, and there are a lot of factors that could go into this, but a lot of the time these folks are prescribed these things and they have other underlying issues. They have gut issues, they have stress issues, they have all these things. And they're just taking this drug to mask those things that could be corrected through habitual means, or maybe over-the-counter supplementation and so on and so forth. I'm going a little off track here, but my point is that a lot of the time these things are put in there to fix an issue that is caused by something else that they're already doing. Now, some of the behavioral disorders like the bipolar, to an extreme extent, that's not necessarily true. They may be born with some genetic variables that are causing these things, or at least making them a lot worse. But in a lot of cases, at least that I see, that is common. Next, is there a way to improve insulin sensitivity in an off-season scenario without dropping weight or mini dieting? Maybe, and the only real way that you would accomplish that is maybe through things like using supplements or pharmaceuticals that would help. So that's going to be any of your glucose disposal agents or insulin mimetic agents, insulin receptor sensitizing agents, and things like that. But overall, it's going to be really boiled down to the inputs, how much you're eating, how long have you been eating it, stress, sleep, like all those variables, stress and sleep especially, and digestion, will impact your insulin sensitivity because they could be causing indirect rising of blood glucose hepatically from adrenaline and cortisol. The answer would be yes, you could add things like that in there, metformin, all that good stuff, but that might not be enough to override dietary things that are going on or lifestyle things that are maybe out of whack, like I mentioned, because you can definitely jack up blood glucose and cause this state of like insulin resistance from just poor sleep and too much stress and overtraining and stuff like that. The other things like small nutritional differences, some people's digestion and some people's blood glucose and stuff look better on a little more fat versus a little more carbs or different ratios. Yes, that is like very minimal difference in some people. And that really boils down to like how well they digest the foods. Those things could help as well. So yeah, there are some small things that might make a difference. And don't get me wrong, like I see people that I get that are off season and they look insulin resistant on paper. They've got the high blood glucose, they've got the elevated insulin levels, and so on and so forth. And we fix all those other lifestyle things we talk about, and boom, those levels drop, even though they're still eating more food. So yes, that stuff will absolutely help. But if none of those things are wrong, you probably just need to reduce calories. Should metformin be cycled in and out for a period of time or all the time? Oh, year-round usage is fine. As far as like safety profile and long-term, it's a very well-tolerated pharmaceutical. Tons of clinical research on it, especially long-term use. So it doesn't really need to be cycled. I mean, you could kind of like cycle it kind of the same way someone, like I mentioned the insulin question above, in that periods where you are leaner or just more insulin sensitive, you just really don't need it, right? And so it can be cycled that way, but you wouldn't necessarily have to. I've heard guys recommend ARBs like telmisartan for dudes on TRT or other compounds, even with blood pressure in range, prior to ARB usage. Is there a benefit or danger of this approach? One of the obvious concerns would be, hey, am I going to drop my blood glucose too low? The answer would be probably dose dependent. 40 milligrams seems to be kind of like minimum effective dose. I've seen some small benefits with 20 milligrams in this type of crowd that has no prior high blood pressure and healthy, like pretty close to healthy health markers. So like as a preventative, right? But the dose is really going to be the thing. Monitor blood pressure, make sure that it's not dropping too low, and control it that way, right? That's going to be your biggest thing there. And if you do that, you're still going to get the other renal protective benefits and cardio protective benefits and, hematocrit lowering and things of that nature that come with it. Start low, assess, maybe even start at 20, then you could bump to 40. If you have blood pressure issues already, go to your doctor, talk to them, see if this is an option that they will prescribe to you, is a prescription. But yeah, there are definitely people that do use it that don't have high blood pressure, and they do okay with it. Last one. So they asked, what is DMHA and what would be the difference between a pre-workout product with it and without it? DMHA is a stimulant, central nervous system stimulant. If I remember correctly, this kind of came out as like the DMAA replacement, even though they're not exactly the same, but some people like one more than the other. But it was used as like the decongestant. So we're talking very similar to pseudoephedrine, ephedrine, things like that. Even though ephedrine has another expectorant, I believe would be like the class of medication added to it. So like your Broncaid and Primatene or Primatan or however you say it. It's similar stimulant, central nervous system stimulant, similar like amphetamine-like structure, or at least like activity to it. So that would be the difference between ones that have it and ones don't, is you're going to get that extra effect, which some people like and some people just don't feel good on it. Now, the one thing to consider would be a lot of those supplements already have caffeine or yohimbine or other stimulants. They may have like teacrine or dynamine, or like there's short and long acting stimulants and stuff. So there may be multiple things in there. So just be careful when you use those products that you understand that, yeah, they have DMHA, but they also have caffeine and teacrine in there. So they don't just have 300 milligrams of caffeine. They have got 300 milligrams of caffeine and a couple hundred milligrams of teacrine and, you know, whatever DMHA, and like they have a lot of stimulants in there. Be careful with that. Keep that in mind if you're using those things. Hopefully that's helpful. And that is it for this week. I hope everyone enjoyed. I will talk to y'all next time.